41.2%. 41.2%. Just let that sink in for a moment. 41.2%. It is nothing I've ever seen before. Man. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the technical recession that Singapore has got into for the second quarter of this year, due largely to the pandemic, COVID-19 itself. And although it's a technical recession, and what exactly is a technical recession? Well, a technical recession is where an economy sees a negative growth in terms of its GDP for 2 consecutive quarters. And that's where you consider the economy to be in recession. Now, is that huge? Well, 41.2%, it's definitely huge. But what does it mean for the rest of us? What does it mean for you and I? I think there are 2 levels that we need to look at. One is that these are purely based on data itself. And what that means is at the ground level, at the level that we are at, we still haven't felt the impact of this. And of course, the first wave of people who are definitely going to feel this impact, it's definitely going to come from the manufacturing, it's going to come from the construction, for example. However, all this impact and all this will, in a way, affect the rest of us when it comes down. So what this means is that, of course, when this company suffers a contraction or a decrease in terms of demand itself, what's likely going to happen is that you are going to see a contraction of consumption. And when you have a contraction of consumption, that's where it's going to hit the retail, that's where you're going to hit the consumer level. So right now, it is still at the industrial level, but wait till it comes to the consumer level. I think that is something that it's going to hit us hard. So I'm reading this from the Channel News Asia official page, and it talks about on a quarter-to-quarter seasonally adjusted annualized basis, Singapore's GDP shrank 41.2% in the period from April to June, deepening the 3.3% contraction in the preceding 3 months, which is January to March itself. So what this means is Singapore has technically entered a technical recession defined by economists as 2 consecutive quarter-on-quarter contractions. Now, this initially, the economists polled by Reuters had expected a 37.4% shrinkage. However, we're seeing a much bigger shrinkage at this point in time. And so there are a few things that we need to look at this and to be able to kind of understand what this means and how it's going to impact us at this level. So first thing first, what we want to do is we want to examine it from what I call the system perspective. Now, the system perspective, essentially, it's looking at, based on where we're at in terms of our business itself, what are the different parties that are going to be impacted. So for example, if you take your company at a center and you look at the people that you deal with, so you have your clients, your staff, your suppliers, your competitors, you, your partners. And so in that entire ecosystem itself, it's not just you who's going to be impacted, but the impact that you feel is going to have an impact on your suppliers, it's going to have an impact on your partners, it's going to have an impact on your staff. So that is the first level. So looking at it from that system perspective really gave us that ability to see how our business, it's, if we experience a contraction in our business, how is that going to make an impact on the people within our ecosystem itself, right? And of course, individually, if someone in the family has experienced a reduction, a contraction, which is basically a reduction of income, of course, that's going to have an impact on the family expenditure, and the outlook isn't going to be that great. And so as a result of that, people are going to scale back in terms of their spending. And because of that sudden contraction or that sudden pullback in terms of spending, what's going to happen is it's going to lead to a further second round of contraction around within the ecosystem itself. And so that is at the systems perspective level. Next, if when we move to the next level, I think the once we kind of understand, at a systemic level, how people are going to be impacted because of the contraction, the next thing that what we want to do is really to be able to kind of look at the future and then develop a series of hypotheses to be able to help us navigate or to help us understand what's coming. So there are a few things that's going to happen. One assumption could be this contraction, it's only temporary. And what's going to happen, it's going to go away like all recessions. And then the projects that we used to have, that we lost it during the recession, is now going to come back, right? So that's one assumption, which means if people lose their jobs, they're probably going to get it back, and they're probably going to be able to find the same kind of work with the same kind of pay when the economy recovers. So that's one assumption. Another assumption is that there are going to be industry that it's going to be disrupted. And what that means is that you're going to see a great number of industry that is going to be decimated by this recession itself. And the worst thing is some of them might not even recover. They might go under. And so some of those businesses or some of those industry, you may never see them again, right? Example could be face-to-face training. That is something that is going to be, if not reshaped, it's going to be permanently affected. And so the ability to master the skill to think about how one could deliver training is going to be of tremendous urgency. And so the second assumption really is that some of this thing that we used to do, that's not coming back, which means there's going to be a huge number of people who are going to be caught in a situation whereby if they are not prepared to embark on this new way of doing things, they are definitely going to be left out. So that is the second assumption. Now, the third assumption or the third hypothesis would be that in this whole flux of things, what we're going to see is we are going to definitely see new industries, new way of doing business, new way of interaction. If we haven't already seen that, we're going to see new things that's going to come up that currently we may not even know that it exists. So an example could be a sudden emergence of a particular way of showcasing your company. It's now going to be made possible, but 6 months or 12 months prior to that, it's probably something that you have never thought of, or you didn't even think of that, because the primary assumption was that life was going to go on as normal. And so I think these are the three key hypotheses that one can have to allow us to think about what is going to go, how is it going to look like going forward. Now, once we have established those hypotheses, the next thing really is to ask ourselves, let's take a look at, now that we have an idea of these are the three possibilities, right? Because you would have some things that you're going to come back. As an example, you are still going to see some type of businesses is going to resume, because there is no way that some of these services can be replaced by technology, or at least we have not envisaged that yet. Example, like haircut. You cannot go on a Zoom and have the hairdresser instruct you and you cut your own hair. It's just not going to work. And so there are certain industries that are definitely going to bounce back once the economy recovers. But there are going to be some industries that are going to be redefined. An example would be training. An example would be conferences. These will be redefined. People are going to significantly think about the way that we are going to conduct business with regards to training, with regards to conferences. And of course, to a certain degree, what's that going to impact is that's going to impact on commuting patterns, and that's going to impact on real estate as well. So that's the second hypothesis. And then the third hypothesis is, what if with this new normal that people start embracing a new way of doing things? What if we are able to do things that previously we never thought possible, but now it becomes a possibility, something that we have not thought before? An example would be, 10 years ago, we would not have thought like jumping into a stranger's car when you go to another country. It's something that you would do, but now we all do that. Staying in a stranger's place in another country, it's something unthinkable 10 years ago, but now it's something that we would do, right? And so what are some of these industries that are going to sprout, right? And so with that itself, these are the three hypotheses. Now, then, once we have established the hypothesis, the next thing really is to let's look at our past, and let's look at what were our strengths, what were we strong in. So, for example, for someone like myself, what I'm strong in is the ability to understand, to be able to empathize with the needs of my potential customers. That's something that I am good at. The other thing that I'm good at is I am good at synthesis, which means I'm able to take, few pieces of things, put them together, and to present it in a refreshing way. That is synthesis. It's and and so we want to find out what are our strengths and what are some of the ways that we have been doing certain things that have been our forte. And once we have understood those strengths itself, the next thing is to look at those three hypotheses and start asking ourselves, how do we then leverage the strength, understanding the hypothesis, what are some of the outcome that we can look at? And that will help us decide, like, for example, well, I'm good at synthesizing things. So perhaps what I can do is I could draw information article, consolidate that, read through them quickly, and then distill insights, analysis, and predictions even that people might miss or might not see. And how about doing it in a way that is digital, doing it in a way that it's automated, for example? So that becomes our end goal. Let's look at what are our strengths and look at how we are able to use our strength to arrive at that end goal and decide on that end goal for ourselves. So we have system perspective, we have hypothesis driven, we have thinking in time, and we have intent focus. And of course, with all things, especially if we are talking about looking ahead, with all things, we always need to keep an open mind. We always need to ensure that we are flexible enough, adaptable enough. We always need to be sure that we have our eyes and our nose on the pulse of the economy, of what's happening. So a few things we can look at trends, we can look at what's happening, we can look at the impact that it's going to make, we can look at how we're going to navigate this, and finally we can look at what we're going to keep and what we're going to improve, what we're going to start, what we're going to stop. And truly, I think that is the correct recipe to address this, because most people will look at this statement, 41.2%, and I think they're going to freak out. And people are going to start pulling back. But with every crisis, there is definitely a silver lining. So what exactly is that silver lining? I think that's something for us to consider and to ask ourselves. Until we are able to see that and to be able to envisage how that is going to help us, I think many of us are going to feel nervous going ahead. And so, my friend, I'd like to ask you this. And the question is as follows. What is it that you can do? What is it that you have a skill in? What is it that you are good at? And is there something that you could do knowing full well that there will be some industry that are going to disappear, that there are going to be some industry that is going to be shaken up. There are going to be some new industry that is going to come into our awareness, knowing full well that's going to happen, and knowing full well what are your skills, what are your strengths, what are your core competence. How then will you be able to think about the way going forward? So think about that and think about how you're going to attack this. For me, my eyes are firmly focused on building a business with at least a $1 million annual revenue just selling digital products. It's definitely doable. However, the approach has to be different. And that's what this show is all about. So if you want to join me for the ride, I welcome you on board. Leave me a comment. Hit the thumbs up and follow me. And you take care, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm still processing my thought on 41.2%. Speak soon. Bye-bye.